Hello everybody, welcome back. Johnny here coming at you today with my thoughts and impressions on Ghost Recon. I ended up playing a bunch of it this week. Impressions early on weren't that great, but I actually ended up warming to the game quite a bit the more I played. And so let me break down the good and the bad as always. Let's go. So the game actually has a lot of cool locations to offer, and the graphical detail is there when it comes to foliage especially, but also weather effects. I was impressed with the rain, I thought it looked great. Really enjoyed the snowy peaks and the way you could actually roll in snow to camouflage yourself. Very cool stuff, and as someone who enjoys just traversing terrain on my own and being the kind of lone walker sharpshooter, really had a lot of fun with all of that stuff. I also have a lot of respect for the glass cannon situation that the game offers here, which means you can headshot any enemy, doesn't matter how powerful they are, but they can also, in the same way, kill you very quickly. So it's a very balanced dynamic in that sense. Whenever drones and kind of armored enemies come into play, that breaks down. But when it comes to just normal people, they have the same resistance to bullets in the head that you do, which is a good thing. The driving feels a lot better here too, and I really enjoy some of the vehicles, especially when you find a helicopter and use that to exfil from an operation. Really cool stuff. They've done a great job with the visuals, even from very high up. There is a little bit of pop in the edges, even in Ultra with a 1080 Ti, but it is not very noticeable and really elevates the feel of the game when you're able to see those locations from high up and see how things connect and all of the roads and all of that kind of high level detail, even from high up, as I say. And overall, I just gotta say, it's kind of fun to play, man. Even despite some of the issues that we'll mention in a little bit, I find myself coming back to this. I enjoy the feeling of going into an area and gauging whether or not I'm gonna be able to tackle it on my own. And if I'm not gonna be able to do that, maybe I can just silently infiltrate, grab the intel I need, and then get the hell out of there. Or kind of go for broke and try to just take everybody out in a location. That's also fun. So it does offer a great deal of enjoyment if you can get past some of the quibbles that I'll mention after this. Alright, so here's the rub. The game is very clunky at times with its animations and how you interact with the world. For example, prompts disappearing when you're trying to interact with elements in the game world, or simply your animations taking you further than you would have liked them to, or in a different direction. It's just kinda janky how it works at times, and it can be frustrating very continually. So I would just warn you about that. It didn't totally break my enjoyment, but definitely broke my immersion very often. And the menu's a disaster, guys. It's really bad. It actually stands in your way from figuring out game systems and kind of what you have to do, how to do things. It does take a very long time to get used to it. Once you do, you can operate. It's not the worst, I guess, but yeah, it's kind of the worst. Luckily, the HUD can be turned off, and it has an exploration mode where you don't rely on markers to go to places. Instead, you get clues, and looking at the map, you gotta figure out where the location's gonna be. And I gotta say, it's kind of enjoyable. It's simple enough that it wasn't frustrating, but it adds a little bit extra on top of the usual formula of go here, kill that, loot that. It also suffers from a mild case of the Ubisoft syndrome, where if the game sees you haven't had any action in a minute, it decides to spawn a plane or a drone on top of you, and then enemies magically spawn around you, which is very, very annoying. It doesn't happen as often as games like Far Cry 5, and it's a bit easier to avoid if you can just kind of camouflage yourself when you see a plane come by you. But it is fairly annoying, and I find it just not necessary. I think, it's okay to leave the gamer alone for a little bit and have some kind of peace and quiet as they traverse the locations. And honestly, if I'm driving a vehicle of someone's faction, how in the fuck do they recognize me from miles away? Honestly, it's like I have a microchip inside that these fucking guys can tell that I'm driving one of their cars and they chase me from however far away they are. It's just insane. I'm really fed up with that dynamic in these games, and I needed to mention it here. Also, the writing is pretty poor. You know, I'm not gonna spoil any of the story here, but to say it's a letdown is probably to understate it by leagues and leagues. It's really not great. It's not good. And listen, the voice actors are actually doing a good job here. I like the main protagonist. The bad guy is obviously a famous actor as well, does a good job. But overall, it just doesn't come together, and it doesn't kind of solidify into anything that you would write home about in any sort of way. And the last thing I'll mention here is that they really try to shove the multiplayer down your throat, so someone like myself who was after a single player experience mostly, I just found it kind of tiresome that I had all of this multiplayer stuff just being shoehorned in, and in the hub you see all of these people with, you know, I don't need to see Mr. Potato Ganker 02 here in my world. There's no need for that, and they're pushing all of the raid stuff that I don't care about. There's also microtransactions all over the place. You can buy stuff. Pretty much everything in the game can kind of be bought to expedite your progress, which I honestly don't have a problem with, especially on the single player side, which is what I've been exposed to the most. And I was able to totally avoid and not interact with any microtransactions. So my experience is that actually they didn't affect gameplay at all. But I know a lot of people will be annoyed by that, so I will just mention it here. So my closing thoughts are that this isn't really something you're gonna feel great about paying full price. I got a code from Karak with ACG and Ubisoft, so thank you to those guys. I really appreciate it, and I'm having a good amount of fun with it. But I would say half price is something you'd be okay with here, and even if you liked Wildlands, it's not a guarantee you're gonna like this. I think it's quite different from that. So I would say go into it with caution and be aware it does have problems, but it also does have quite a bit of enjoyment to offer if you can get past those issues. So I hope you enjoyed the video here. If you did, consider checking out my Twitch channel. I'm live Mondays to Wednesdays at 7 p.m. UK and Saturdays at 2 p.m. UK. Always nice to see new people there. I really appreciate all of your positive feedback recently on all of that stuff. And as always, guys, we'll catch you next time.